Hi, I'm James McGuire, and on today's video, we're talking about cybersecurity trends here in early 2025. We'll take a look at issues like large language model security, data harvesting, employee education, and we'll also offer advice on how to handle this year's biggest cyber challenges. To discuss that, I'm joined by Nick Heudecker, Senior Director, Market Strategy and Competitive Intelligence at Cribl. Nick, very good to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me, James. Appreciate being here.
So, Cribl may not be as known as some players yet. I know we're in the process of changing that, but before we get to our questions today, tell us a little bit about Cribl. What exactly does Cribl do?
Yeah, Cribl's been around since about 2017, 2018, and we are specifically building solutions for IT and security folks
Mhm,
to better manage and deal with the onslaught of data that they have to cope with.
mhm.
Whether that's feeding data into a SIM product or an APM, giving them more control over what shape that data takes, what format it's in, how it might get enriched or redacted or reduced before it lands there. That's really our mission, giving people better choice and control over those data, over that data set.
Yeah, but there's a need for that, no doubt about it. All right, so let's talk about some key cybersecurity trends. Obviously, there's a lot going on early in this year. Large language model security. That's a key one, and there's a lot going
Yeah.
on in terms of, an employee might put a piece of confidential information into the model. There's bias. We don't know who built the model, perhaps. So what are some of the large language model security issues?
Well, so Cribl's got its own Copilot that it has as part of its overall product suite. And, some of the questions that our customers actually ask us about, how do you use LLMs, what security concerns they have, it's really who provides that foundational model, right? So where are you actually going to get that LLM from? That helps to shape some of the security questions you may want to ask next.
Hmm.
What are your policies around data retention? Right. So how long is that, model provider going to be using your data, or how long might we retain that data? And then what kind of data are you actually collecting? Right. So those are some of the high level questions that we always see on, RFPs or security questionnaires, things like that.
Hmm.
And I think that as companies start to adopt more LLMs, I think most of them will be coming from service providers, right? ServiceNow is a great example here. They'll want to be asking those questions of those service providers to ensure that they're not, experiencing PII leakage or other things like that, and understanding how that data is going to be used beyond the context of their own consumption of an LLM.
Hmm. Do you think companies, when they look at the idea of an LLM, they should think to themselves, "Oh goodness, security alert"? I mean, is it rife with security issues or not necessarily?
I, I would say it's not more rife with security issues than anything else,
Okay.
which is the upside, because then you can use the same policies that you have used before to ensure that you're securing an LLM, right? And that might be like parameterized inputs, where you can only say, all right, well, you only get to access this one piece of information that I want you to use for generating a response.
Hmm.
Data governance, right? I'm a data management person, right?
Right.
I view the world as like it's either a data management issue or an integration issue.
You were
Uh,
to remind people, you were a Gartner analyst in that area, correct?
Yeah, so I covered data management, BI and analytics, a number of those kind of data topics around data and analytics,
Yep.
and so that's still very much my background. And so when I look at the world, it's like, well, that's your issue. The things that people should be doing around data, as far as metadata, lineage, all of access control, governance, all of that blocking and tackling, while it's not super sexy, you have to do those things if you want to be successful and secure with LLMs,
Hmm.
right? It's just another algorithm. It really depends on how you treat your data and how you teach your employees to use that data that's really going to make the difference over time.
Right. What about the issue of data harvesting? Sometimes I think our entire world is just one constant data harvest. We don't know who's harvesting our data and why and what they're doing with
Yeah.
it. What are the issues there?
Well, the issue, exactly what you said, right? How is that data going to be used? Where does it go beyond the first party collector? I get an email, or not an email. I will get physical mail about once a month, once a quarter, saying, "Oh, we experienced a data breach. We're going to buy you, identity theft protection for the next year."
Hmm.
I have no idea who that company is,
Right.
right? Yet
Right.
somehow they ended up with my data, either from healthcare, insurance, or something else.
Right.
So it's often not even like the direct first party data collectors. It's everywhere else that it goes. You don't know how that's going to be used, how they're going to secure it, or in the case of the people that send me mail, not secure it.
Right.
So
Right.
there's a lot of issues there. And this is something that, our customers, while they're not dealing with data harvesting per se, they're very concerned about, things like GDPR and other data privacy rules and regulations.
Mhm.
So, everybody ends up with some kind of data, and it's how are you going to deal with that on the back end? How are you going to ensure that it's anonymized and so on? I think
Mhm.
one of the advantages of LLMs, going back to the earlier topic, is people are now really using a lot of synthetic data to
Right.
to train these models because
Uh-huh.
real world data is messy and has varying quality characteristics and could have bias as
Sure.
part of it. So
Right.
while that data harvesting is still definitely happening, I think you're seeing a lot of different diverse types of data being used in the AI LLM space also.
What about the issue of educating employees about cybersecurity? Because I always think about the human element as the really, really weak element in security. What should people know about this?
Well, I mean, you've got to put yourself in the employee's shoes, right? We're all dealing with like a lot of cybersecurity expectations, right? Don't click on this link, ensure it's not a phishing attempt, and so on.
Hmm.
And I still have work to do, right? I've got policies that I need to follow, but I still have to do things immediately. So I'm looking for convenience.
Sure.
Um, what policies are still really going to be relevant? And I think that's one reality that CISOs need to come to terms with. The other is that if I break a security policy, who cares, right? I'm not going to suffer, I'm not going to be accountable for that.
Hmm.
So it's not really something I have to be terribly concerned about, right? I may click on a phishing link and I have to go through a training program, but after that, it's forgotten. So I'm
Hmm.
not really accountable. That's something else people need to think about when they're building out these programs.
You're saying
Uh,
the employees themselves are not accountable. Is that what you mean?
that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And the last is, sometimes it's okay to violate policies, but when?
Hmm.
And so I think, you need to make it much more relevant, when you're training employees on cybersecurity for their jobs. You have to kind of ensure that they're understanding the kind of data they're dealing with. Like if this is your data, how would you want it managed? You know, you have to treat your employees to be a little more empathetic,
Hmm.
maybe. But at the same time, you have to also get rid of all the useless policies that are just noise, right? And so ensure that you're only following maybe the 25-30% that are actually relevant for your business.
Hmm.
Don't just create policy to create policy.
Right.
And then the last thing is, ensure that one, employees are being held accountable. I don't know what that looks like depending on a given organization or industry.
Right.
Um, and then lastly, when you've got company or you got employees that are trained up, they should have some leeway to decide, what, for expediency, whether it's my own work or for the business, when can I violate these policies and how far can I go?
Hmm.
Is it something you should do every day? Obviously not.
Hmm.
But this, kind of all or nothing when there's no accountability, it's hard to get buy-in from the employees under all those circumstances. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Yeah, well, it does. In fact, it makes a lot of sense. It's very real world, is what I would say. It's beyond making sense. I think, but the question I would raise about it is, I've never known a company that said it's okay to violate the rules sometimes, based on even though we know in the real world it has to be that way, but the companies don't tend to acknowledge that fact.
They don't. But look, we live in a real world. It's not, we're not automatons, we're not LLMs,
Right.
even though they have varying results. Um, you've got to make security more practical
Hmm.
if you expect your employees to follow those policies.
Right.
You can't just throw out a bunch of policies and agents on your machines and so on and just expect that everything's going to go well. You need to develop empathy, you need to create accountability, and also know when, hey, you just got to get work done.
Mhm. Right, right. All right, so let's move on to what might be referred to as the advice portion of our talk. What's the advice in
Okay.
terms of when executives are grappling with this year's risk? What should they prioritize? How do they do it? In other words,
Well, it's a tough question to answer because every industry is going through different types of risk.
right.
What I think it's really difficult to give hard and fast advice right now, right? We've got a new administration coming in.
Mhm.
There's questions about the Chevron doctrine, right? The entities like the SEC and the FTC and others, can they actually enforce the regulations that they create
Hmm.
anymore?
Hmm.
So we've got to, you've got to build for a certain amount of resiliency and also flexibility. When I'm talking with CISOs and CIOs, I'm really trying to advise them like, look, you've got to modernize how you're dealing with all of this data, right? Telemetry data, right? The exhaust that comes out of business processes is 20 to 30 times more voluminous than the business process data itself.
Hmm.
How do you manage all that,
Mhm.
right? Do you need to put all that data in one place? Do you tier it based on cost and value? So, trying to think about like how do I, what advice am I sharing? It's really rethinking, in an environment with a lot of uncertainty coming, how do you better manage your data so that you can react to that faster?
Mhm.
So build with, data tiering in mind around cost and value, and then keep your options open as long as possible. Using abstraction layers between where data is coming from and where it's landing. And that message has resonated really well.
Well, it seems like part of it would be the compliance question. Like how hard do you lean on the compliance piece? I mean, is that absolute? We talked about this, I realize. So it's do
Yeah,
you make it absolute? I mean, what is the compliance piece of this issue?
you cannot budge on compliance. Like you have to keep that data. It might be for 3 years or 7 years. So you need to have a copy of all of that data available.
Hmm.
Does it need to be in the hottest tier of storage? No, it doesn't. Um, some of our customers are keeping all that data on-prem. They're just rolling storage array networks into the data center. There's a better way to do that, right? You can put that data in the cloud, encrypt it, leave it in a place where you can still get hot access to it and still query that data for compliance purposes.
Hmm.
So you don't always have to take kind of the legacy approach, but you still have to comply, right? Whether you're in insurance, healthcare, finance, right? You still have to deal with that data and manage it appropriately.
Hmm. All right, last question. What do you see as the near to midterm future of cybersecurity as AI plays an ever greater role? And it feels like kind of a wild card because we don't really
Yeah.
know how AI is going to shake out. It's evolving even as we speak. So what it's going to be 9 months from now is not what it is going to be now. So it's hard to make blanket statements, but still,
Yeah.
cybersecurity in the face of AI?
I think you're going to see AI get used in cybersecurity as a force multiplier, right?
Hmm.
It's going to help triage alerts. It's going to help elevate your kind of level one analyst to, a level two, maybe level three analyst.
Hmm.
You should look to AI to remove some of the drudgery
Hmm.
from the job, right? AI, or sorry, cybersecurity is a very high stress job. So
Right.
if there's anything that you can do to lower that stress, retain staff, lean into those opportunities. Also, keep in mind that a lot of AI efforts today are not, formally funded by IT, right? That's coming out of an innovation budget. So as you kind of promote them from the innovation budget to IT, make sure the controls are in place. But I think that you're going to see much more use of AI in cybersecurity. But to your point, it's early, right?
Hmm.
People ask, what inning are we in AI? We're still in batting practice right
Right.
now,
It's
right?
true.
Like we're really just getting started. And so, measure your investment, right? And analyze it. Are we getting the results we expect?
Hmm.
If not, maybe back off a little bit, revisit it in 12 months, 6 months, depending on what you can do.
Hmm. Nick, I think you said it. It's going to be a really interesting sector to follow. Thank you for sharing expertise. Please come back and talk with us again sometime.
Anytime. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.